talking for nothing, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. But super excited to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I won't ask you any questions until we get people in here first.
That sounds good.
So typically, we'll probably do this for about maybe an hour or so, depending on how conversation is. Maybe a little longer, depending on your time frame. But we usually like to keep our lives between 9 to 9:30, so I think that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, it sounds great to me. That
Okay,
perfect for me.
awesome, cool. Let's see.
Do do not have anything after this except going to bed. I've got a quiz tomorrow, so
Oh, fun stuff.
Latin,
Fun stuff.
definitely fun stuff.
Oh yeah, big time. Let's see. Let me message. Cool. All right. Well, we have a person in, and we have some more on the way. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you so much for joining today. This is going to be great. I'm glad we finally were able to do this opportunity and have some time out of our busy schedules to be able to sit down and do this. So, uh, Reagan, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, I guess.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here today. My name is Reagan Faulkner. I'm the host of the Reagan Faulkner Show. And a little bit about me, I go to UNCW, University of North Carolina, Wilmington. I'm president of our College Republicans chapter here, and just super happy to be here today. Super happy to be making an impact on the conservative world.
Yeah. So, why did you decide that you wanted to be a part of the conservative world, if you will?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back all the way to when I was really young. My name's Reagan. My parents named me after the one and only Ronald Reagan. And I've always been interested in politics. My parents have always been engaged in politics, not like going to GOP meetings and stuff like that, but the news was always on. We were always talking about free markets and capitalism. My parents owned their own business up until last year when they sold it. So I was always kind of around that sort of stuff, always learning about what it means to be a conservative, what it means to be a Republican. And when I went to college, I honestly didn't want to go. I had read Charlie Kirk's book, College Stand, which I've got right behind me. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go, but I want to be a lawyer. So you kind of have to go. And I became president of College Republicans. And then after Charlie Kirk's assassination, our club partnered with Turning Point USA to host a vigil. And we had an artist come in and paint our spirit rock. And it was a beautiful mural of Charlie with one of his quotes, an American flag. It was beautiful. It was amazing. And the next day, we have a 24-hour courtesy rule, and it was vandalized. And
Mm,
it just led to a bunch of crazy stuff happening on our campus, all the way up until where we had a hoax that an active shooter was on our campus, and it was alleged that I was on a hit list. And it was crazy. And one of my friends from our local GOP, the gentleman who actually told me about the alleged hit list, asked me at a GOP event about a week or two later if I would be interested in joining him on the Wilmington Standard, which is his platform, and becoming a contributor and starting my own show. And that's really where it all kicked off. I feel like from a very young age, I was interested in politics and knew I wanted to do something in politics, but it wasn't until September that I really had an opportunity to use my voice and get into the nitty gritty of everything.
I'm so glad you said that because I remember having this somewhat of a similar story. By the way, I believe I had seen on social media the rock that was vandalized shortly after. I think that was pretty popular. I'd seen that a lot, so I'm pretty sure that was the same rock,
It
which is
was
insane.
I'm sure it was. It was wild. It went viral on Libs of TikTok. Then I went viral on
Mhm.
Libs of TikTok, and I ended up going on the Ingram angle about it. So it
Wow.
was a huge thing. Nothing like what we expected. We were like, wow, somebody painted the rock, and then it became a national story.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow. And then on my end, so I've always been in politics, involved in politics, and had a love for politics. I can remember 2012. I was watching the presidential debate between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, and I remember listening to their ideas. You know, obviously, I was at that time 10 years old, so I didn't have the best knowledge in political expertise that I do now. But I just remember watching, and I'm like, man, I really do not like this Obama guy. Like these policies just don't make sense. 10-year-old me spotting that. But and my family was heavily involved in politics as well. So my stepdad was actually the mayor of our small town. My dad was the
Wow.
president of Main Street, and then my stepmom was the president of the Chamber of Commerce in the same town. So like
Wow.
we pretty much had a stronghold over the town, if you will. But
Yeah.
overall, yeah, it was such a so like from a young age, I really had a love for politics. Well, currently I'm in the military, so I put politics on the back burner for a little bit here, and then I just after the I remember the Charlie Kirk. I was sitting in my office and I had seen like the horrific video, which I wish I had not seen the video.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was terrible. And I remember just like completely in shock, like, oh my goodness. I came back home, I turned on Fox News, I was just sitting there watching it, and they finally announced that he had passed away. And I just remember sitting there and I almost had like a moment with God, with him saying like, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to just like let it end here? How are you going to contribute and help? And I felt a tugging on my heart to essentially pick up the microphone, as a lot of people have said, and continue this fight. And then 8 days later, September 19th, we launched the Martin Memo, and now we're growing, and we get to have wonderful people like you on the show. So that's great to hear. I'm glad that we had this. I mean, it's a terrible, tragic story on how we truly got involved, but I'm glad that we both get to share this opportunity and talk. And this is exactly what Charlie Kirk wanted. He didn't want it to end where it did. He wanted it to continue growing and get better and better. And we are products of that same vision. So I'm glad to be sharing the live stream with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as tragic as it was, and I saw the video too. I was actually finishing up a homework assignment and going to my class that the assignment was due for, and my boyfriend and I were scrolling on X because our friend had texted and said he got shot. Both of us were like, "Oh, it's probably like when Trump got shot.
Yes.
Liberals can't aim. He's okay." And we saw the far away one and it auto scrolled, and
Yeah.
we were like, "Okay, we can actually know what happened." And
Right.
watching that video is
Yeah.
probably one of the biggest regrets. I wish I'd never seen it,
Yeah.
but um I mean, it's what Charlie would have wanted and everything that he's talked about. He wanted to
Right.
mobilize the next generation, and I'm glad to be here too. I'm glad that both of us, were able to actually use our voices.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just going back to that video real quick, and then we'll move on. I had the same thought. Oh, well, okay. He probably just got shot in the arm or something. Liberals can't aim. Probably not a big deal. And then I came across that terrible video, and I was just like, oh, as soon as I had seen the video, I'm like, he's unfortunately deceased. Like there was not a doubt in my mind. Yeah, very, very traumatic, but I'm glad we get to be the products of this, and we get to continue a legacy. And yeah, I do want to talk to you about some of the most controversial issues probably facing America today. I think the first one, which it really shouldn't be a controversy, but it's worthy of a discussion, and that was the Super Bowl halftime that we all endured last night. So, did you
Yeah.
see the Bad Bunny one? Did you see the
I
Turning Point
actually
one? Did
I
you? Would
actually I watched the Turning Point one. I had a group
okay.
of really good friends come over there. I think there were about 12 or 15 of us. We played pool and ate pizza and watched it. And Turning Point one was great. And then before I
Yeah.
came on the show tonight, scrolling through Instagram, I'm like, I bet we're gonna talk about the Super Bowl. I need to go and actually watch Bad Bunnies and see what happened because I saw that it was horrible. And then I had a friend say that he doesn't mind like the genre of music that Bad Bunny that he plays, I guess. I don't know a lot about Bad Bunny, but once I watched it, I was like, I don't know what my friend is talking about. He's a Republican.
Yeah.
And he said it was good. I'm like, no, no, that is the worst halftime show I've seen in 21 years of my life. It was awful.
Yeah. Well, I do want to dive into that. So I think this is the biggest thing. People keep painting, and I'm sure there's a few bad apples in the bunch. They keep saying, "Oh well, MAGA," because they like to group everyone together. They don't like it because he's a Puerto Rican, and they think he's not really an American, and all this. And I'm like, personally, that's not why. I don't mind it. I've had a few Bad Bunny songs in the past that I've listened to. I just didn't want to watch the Super Bowl halftime. I didn't want to support that because of his politics, because of what he
Yeah.
stands for, because a week earlier he went on the Grammy stage and bashed ICE. That's why I didn't
Mhm.
want to support it. It has nothing to do with his ethnicity. It has nothing to do with he speaks Spanish. It has to do because of his politics and the way he carries himself. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I completely agree. I think, you do see this urge to just call MAGA racist and whatever the insult is of the week, that's what they want to call
Yeah,
MAGA, and they want to group us together like you said. And they really did want to pull the, well, because ICE is deporting people from Hispanic and South American countries, then they just don't like Hispanics and South Americans. So that's why they don't like Bad
right.
Bunny. And for me, it boiled down to, I'm a business major, so bear with me here. You have to look at your consumers. And your consumers are people who watch NFL football. They watch it for, almost a year once you count in preseason and
Yeah,
postseason, they're locked in, they're watching, they have their teams. We've got the Patriots back in it. That's an extremely large fan base.
right.
And your average NFL fan is not going to want to watch an entire halftime show in a language that they can't speak. Your average NFL fan most likely doesn't know who Bad Bunny is. He's a very new artist, from my understanding. And they also, it's America 250. They want to celebrate America's 250th birthday. So that was my first kind of confusion, was why did they choose this? And then I know that the other option, I'm blanking on his name right now, but I know he's a rapper. Um, no, wait, that was last year. Forget
Yeah.
that. I'm
Kendrick
getting it mixed
Lamar.
up with Kendrick Lamar. I'm so sorry.
Yep.
But that was my first confusion, was kind of why Bad Bunny, America 250, or consumer base, what's going on? And then when he came out that, he wears dresses and he's
Hmm.
effeminate, and again, I was like, this isn't going to buy well with your consumer base of, big tough NFL men. And then we get into him degrading our policies on the Grammy stage, and his, I think it was SNL, where he went up there and said, y'all better learn Spanish or like you're going to
Hmm.
hate the show. I'm like, you're treating the people who are going to watch you in the NFL base, not your base, you're treating them with contempt. I don't think that that's how you get viewers and streamers and fans, is by treating an entire base of people who aren't familiar with you with genuine contempt. So
Right.
for me, it was really a question of why the NFL chose him, looking at their base. And then it was also, I don't appreciate his policies, and I personally
Yeah.
think that the halftime show should be apolitical in nature with apolitical
Yes.
artists. And ever since Jay Z took over in 2019, it's been nothing but political
Yeah.
propaganda with highly political artists.
Exactly. And this is my big point, and I was talking with my stepdad earlier on the same issue, is people want to tune into sports because they want a break with reality and all the
Yes.
craziness around and all the politics. We have enough of that. We consume enough of politics and news and everything around us all the time. We want a break, and that's why we tune into a 3 hour football game on a Sunday or whatever the day is, Thursday, Monday, you pick it. But that is
Yeah.
why we don't want to see politics in there. I do not care personally if it was a Republican preaching his message on the stage. I'd like it more personally, but I still, regardless, don't want to see that in sports. Keep politics out of sports. And I think all the sports, all the big ones at least, MLB, NBA especially, NFL, they need to learn that lesson and learn who you're catering towards. This felt a lot like Dylan Mulvaney on Bud Light, which made no
Yes.
sense. Who are you? Who is Dylan Mulvaney going to help you sell to? Because I guarantee you, Dylan Mulvaney and his crew or the clique or whatever, they're not buying Bud Light. So again, it's just a very another weird marketing move. The numbers are all over the place. I can't get a good read on like how it actually was. I heard it was one of the best Super Bowl performances of halftime as far as numbers wise. Then I heard it was terrible. Then I heard Turning Point had 5 million, and then I heard 10 million, and 20 million even. So it's going to be interesting to see what all the final numbers say. But I have a feeling that the NFL might have awakened a reality check last night with all their politics that they keep putting into our sports.
Absolutely. I think it'll be interesting to look at ratings next season too.
Yeah.
I know, we've got a couple of months, but what are ratings going to look like? Because how many fans did they turn off from this that don't really want to clue in anymore? They can check the score on their phone. They can ask Siri. They can still root for their team without giving all the views. And second of all, I don't think they're going to retain any new fans. I can tell you the people at my school that were very excited about Bad Bunny were people who most likely don't understand the difference between American football and soccer. They don't understand sports. They don't know what's happening. And that's not meant to be a racist thing because of South America and Hispanics and stuff. It's literally, these people don't have a clue. It's a lot of women that don't understand sports. I'm a woman. I understand very few sports. So I'm not even going to act like I'm better than most. And you're not going to retain them. They're not going to come back. They were really excited that it was a name that they knew, that it was Bad Bunny, and they're just going to go off and they won't come back until the next Super Bowl if it's somebody that they like, or to protest it if it's somebody that they don't.
Yeah. I mean, shame on Roger Goodell. And, you know, I do feel, I will say this. So I did watch the Bad Bunny, not during, I wasn't giving any viewership to the NFL. My one viewership really hurt them, I'm sure. But um, one thing I will say is, I think that it could have, because like I said, I ended up watching it, and I think he probably received a lot of pushback, and I think the NFL kind of did put a stronghold on him, because at first I was hearing reports saying he was going to wear a dress, and he didn't end up wearing a
Same.
dress. Then I
Mm-hmm.
heard there was going to be some big political statements, which did not end up happening. Truly, I mean, there were political statements, don't get me wrong, but there wasn't like an ice out pin or something like that
Mm-hmm.
that he was wearing. So I think the NFL maybe have had some leverage in there and maybe put a little pushback, or maybe Bad Bunny knew that it was not the proper time to be doing a political statement, or at least that much of a political statement. So it'll be interesting to see all these ratings and how next year does. But yeah, other than the halftime, I didn't watch the actual Super Bowl, but from what I had seen, and I had seen some highlights, it did not seem. It seemed like it was kind of a snooze fest there. Pretty much the Seahawks dominated the entire game. The Patriots just did not look like a good team last night. So, it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out. I don't know. Did you watch the entire Super Bowl?
I did. Like I said, we had friends over, so I was jumping around,
Yeah.
but it was normally I lock in for the Super Bowl. I love football. I know I said I'm not a big sports girl, and I'm really not for other sports, but I do love football. And it was a really bad game. I think the
Yeah.
first 9 or 12 points that the Seahawks scored were only field goals. They did not get a touchdown until after their ninth point. And again, I told you I'm from North Carolina, so I was rooting for Drake May. I'm a
Yeah.
huge Carolina fan, and that was really all I cared about. Like, it was, for me, it was Carolina versus the Seahawks, which is ironic. UNCW were the Seahawks
Right.
and Carolina fan, but no, it was really an awful game, and I don't recall the commercials being good either. Again, I told you I was with friends, but when the commercials came on, normally everybody kind of hushes and you're watching and, ooh, what's it going to be? And nobody did that. Nobody in our group did that. There was really, in my opinion, there were very few redeeming qualities to this
Right.
year's Super Bowl.
It honestly did feel like a snooze fest. I went to a Super Bowl party, but I ended up leaving right before the first snap. And even normally at a Super Bowl party, there's some energy, there's some smack talk before the game, there's a lot of fun. People are drinking, people are enjoying themselves, eating some nachos, whatever it may be. But it seems like there was none of that this year. It just seemed very stale, very dry, kind of almost like people were just, oh, finally, the NFL season is over. It did not feel like there was a good climactic finish to this year's NFL playoffs, but that could just be
I
me.
completely agree. No, I completely agree. We even had friends that it wasn't even fourth quarter and they were like, "Yeah, I've got class tomorrow.
Yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and head out." And in the past it's been like Super Bowl, you can't get people to leave. You're like, "Please
right.
leave. I want to go to bed." And this year
Yeah,
everyone was gone. You look up and the game's over. It's like, "Okay, I guess there's nothing else to do now except go to
right.
bed and wait till next season."
Right. Here, we got two comments here, and then we'll go ahead and move on to our next topic
Yes,
here. Turning Point halftime was great. Yeah, I think it was.
it
I do
was.
echo, one of the other comments was from Rebecca. I wish the TPUSA halftime had some dancers. It would have been more fun to watch for me. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair statement. What I will say is, from what I heard, TPUSA only had about 2 months to get everything ready, and I thought they did a fantastic job for 2 months. Definitely looked pretty awesome. So I had to keep quiet. Actually, I wasn't aware of this information until after. But one of my friends was actually there watching the show live. They had to
That's
sign
awesome.
NDA and everything for it. But yeah, it was pretty cool. Pretty cool, and I can't wait to see if next year that they bring it back, depending on who the artist is, I'm sure. And yeah, it'll be interesting
Um,
to see.
Andrew Colvette, actually, he was on Fox this morning, and they are bringing it back next year. So
Well, look at
he's
that.
very excited. He said they've got a full year to
Yeah,
plan, and it's going to be bigger and better. Kind of like what you said, they only had
right.
2 months this year, and they did good for 2 months.
Yeah.
But excited to see what 12 months is going to look like.
Yeah, no kidding. I think that Jelly Roll he has to, this next Super Bowl, he has to be the halftime show, whether it's for TPUSA or the actual Super Bowl halftime show is him. But Jelly Roll deserves to be on one of those two stages, and I think he's done a remarkable job. His Grammy speech, if you have not watched it to the audience, is just phenomenal. One of the best things that he said was, Jesus is for everyone, and there is so much truth. And I hope that more people take that message, because Jesus truly is for everyone. He's not for the rich or the upper class. He is for the broken, for the poor. He's for everyone. And I hope more people take advantage of that.
Absolutely. I love Jelly Roll, and I've been saying that all day. I'm like, yeah, he needs to, either one, he just needs to be in the halftime show. And I think that was really the best part of Turning Points, was that they brought Christ to football. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of people listening that may not have ever experienced it. Their parents might have been turned off from it, and they didn't have an opportunity to learn about it. And if you're going to get serious about anything, I would rather it not be politics. I'd rather it be Christ, because that's forever. That's eternal. Politics is
Amen.
going to fade away.
Amen. You are absolutely right on that. One person in the comments, my husband fell asleep during the second half of the Super Bowl. Well, that sums it up right there.
Yep.
So, well, I did talk about the Grammys a little bit, so I think that's a worthy bridge to this next conversation. And
Yeah.
that is the Grammys. What are your thoughts on the Grammys? Because to me, it almost feels like a populist movement. And what I mean by that is, every year they find another way to outdo themselves as far as terrible and mediocrity. And yet again, it appears that happened. It just more provocative clothing, more crazy statements. What are your thoughts on the Grammys this year?
You know, every year I always think to myself, it can't get worse. And it does. And then Chapel Rowan shows up in a dress being held up by nipple piercings. And it gets worse every single year. So I didn't watch it. I never watch it. It's normally one of those things where I wake up the next day and there's a bunch of hate comments about the Grammys. I was like, oh, shoot, I guess the Grammys were last night. So that was basically what happened this year. But as I watched, and actually I did a segment of my show last week about this, it's entirely propaganda.
Yeah.
And it's really sad, because these people, they are elitist. They're extremely wealthy. They, in my personal opinion, they have the time in their lives to follow this. And you were talking about Jelly Roll earlier. There's an interview of Jelly Roll after the Grammys where somebody's like pushing him, and they're like, well, what do you think about ICE? And he's like, man, I grew up in a chaotic household. I grew up in a bad home, and I didn't know politics were real until, I think he said, until he was in prison. He didn't have a phone. He didn't know anything about it. And I think a lot of Americans live like that. And we see these elitists telling us what to do and how to think. And surely they have enough money that they could run for office if they really cared that much. They could start a nonprofit if they really cared that much. But what do? They go on the Grammys where they're wearing who knows how expensive, tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of clothes, celebrating with the wealthiest people in Hollywood. And they're telling us, the people who are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, single parents, everything under the sun, they're telling us, no, you need to go out in the streets and you need to protest. It's kind of like Marie Antoinette with the let them eat cake. They're up here in their high rises telling us, oh, peasants, no, you go out into the street. And you radicalize people that are mentally unstable. You radicalize people like Alex Preddy and Nicole Good, who, oh, Beyonce told me to go out into the street. She told me that nothing bad's going to happen to me. And you end up dead because these people who have no check on reality tell you it's a good idea to go try to drive your car into an ICE agent or shoot an ICE agent.
Yeah, and we're going to touch on ICE next, so I'm glad you brought that up. But for the Grammys, this is my big thing. You are entitled to your own opinion. You have your own opinion, right? And you have every right by the First Amendment to go and say your opinion. But I feel like there's a time and place, and the Grammys is not that place, because it takes away from that amazing work that you've done throughout the year and the amazing voices and the arts that was created. Maybe amazing's an overstretch, but you know what? In a way, all those artists are amazing in what they do, and they have great craft, and it diminishes all the hard work that they've done the previous year, because instead of the headline saying, hey, Bad Bunny, he won Spanish album of the year, I believe. He did all these accomplishments. 100, we'll just say for an example, 100 billion people listened in. Instead, it's like Bad Bunny protested ICE, Bad Bunny, and all this, and nobody wants to see that. It takes away from the true work that is being done. But yeah, what are your entire thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely does diminish their work. And to a degree, I think it's interesting that the people that won got up and had the exact same sentiment. Everybody that won got up and said something very similar. And in my personal opinion, it kind of makes you wonder, did these people win fair and square? Are they the ones that were going to be outspoken? Personally, I don't agree with her politics, but I love Sabrina Carpenter. I am a Sabrina Carpenter stan. I love her. I will listen to her on repeat to the point where everybody around me is annoyed. And I don't understand how she didn't win a Grammy. I think it was Billie Eilish, I believe, that I think they were right there competing for the same one. And I don't really see 5 foot tall Sabrina Carpenter and her sparkles getting up denouncing ICE, but Billie Eilish gets up there and pulls the whole nobody's illegal on stolen land and F ICE and her whole thing. And it just really makes you wonder, were there people that got cheated out of their Grammys because they were more willing to be outspoken than the people who had the better songs? And B, not a big Billie Eilish fan. I've liked a couple of her songs, but after that, I'm never going to listen to her again. Same thing with Bad Bunny. After what he said, I'm not really even willing to get to know his music. Other people I like Olivia Dean, so I'm not going to stop listening to her, but she still didn't say anything all that offensive. Her issue is that she failed to nuance immigrants versus illegal immigrants. Yeah. That was really her biggest issue. Her sentiment was there and it was a nice message. She just missed the nuance. But it really does take away from people's work. And same with the outfits. I've never been a huge Chappell Rowan fan, but I try because my boyfriend's sister really likes her. And I just can't now. After that, I'm like, even the songs that I did somewhat like, that was too much for me.
No kidding. And yeah, I think another point that I had last week on the Grammys is, what was it? We had a really good conversation on here we go. So the bad thing that they keep doing is they keep making it as if there's only two sides to the issue, that you have to hate all immigrants altogether, or you have to love all immigrants and hate the ICE agents and all the federal law enforcement. There's no in between. Like for me, to summarize it in 4 words, just like Ted Cruz, illegal, bad, legal, good. That would be my immigration policy. I have no problems if you want to come into this country legally, but they keep making it and portraying it as you can either, you have to accept all immigrants together, and they keep grouping it, and it's a very dangerous strategy that they keep playing, and this is part of the issue as well. What are your whole thoughts on that?
No, the partisan, and when I say partisan, I mean it's dual. You're one or the other. It's extremely toxic, it's extremely concerning, and it's extremely dangerous. I can give you some personal insight from campus after the Charlie Kirk vigil and everything. And I don't know if you're familiar with Shane Winnings, but our Turning Point chapter hosted him. After all of that, which I enjoyed Shane Winnings' speech, I agree with some of his things, not all of it. But after those two situations, those two events, first of all, nobody talks about Turning Point on our campus. It's always talking about college Republicans. They all group us together. And then they're saying, well, they're Nazis. Well, they hate brown people. Well, they hate anybody that doesn't look like them. And now with the Epstein files, they're grouping us all into pedophiles, and they're the ones that aren't pedophiles. And it's extremely dangerous because I don't know if you've seen this, but apparently the college Republicans and Turning Point chapter at Ohio State University got threats a couple of days ago where they were grouping them all into, you either liked Trump at one point, voted for Trump this time, or somewhat supported him in the past, and you're not human because you're a pedophile, you're a racist, you're a white supremacist, you're a Nazi. And they attach all these labels. So now they've quite frankly brought it to a dual point where it's not just racist or not, MAGA or not, it's not human or not. If we're following the logic of the left at one of America's largest universities, and you hit an extremely dangerous precedent. You do quite frankly hit a Nazi level precedent when you start categorizing entire groups as no longer human. And you're saying things that you have a right to, I think they were saying something along the lines of you have a right to Kirkify them because they're not human. Um,
Wow.
it's sick and it's dangerous and it takes away our humanity. At the end of the day, this is kind of, it's going to sound liberal when I say it, but we are all human. We all are worthy of love. You know, we were talking about Christ a minute ago. We're all sinners and Christ loves each and every one of us regardless of our sin. He died for our sins as long as we repent and come to him and claim that he is Lord and Savior. And they don't have that. They fail to see that. They fail to see the humanity. They literally, the radical ones, I should say, because I don't want to group them into the same thing I'm saying. I don't want to be a hypocrite. Some of them aren't like this, but the ones that are, they're taking away the humanity, and they really do just want to see us not here anymore. It's extremely frightening.
Yeah, it's very scary, and we are so polarized as a country, and it's just it's very sad and it's unreal to see. I didn't think we'd ever get to a spot in America where we again are so polarized. And I know as much as we talk about the left, which it's majority of the left, at least in my opinion,
I
the
agree.
right has some issues too, and we need
Mhm.
to get ourselves together as well. I'm going to give you a good example, and this will segue into our next topic here. When the whole Alex Preddy shooting came out, instantly, we had people automatically going all the way and defending the ICE agents, saying that they could never do any wrong. And then we had people on the other side say automatically, instantly, that Alex Preddy was a good man, an ICU nurse, and all this. Well, I'm going to channel my inner Ben Shapiro here and say two things can be true at once. You look at the
Yes.
footage, we've all seen the footage. That ICE agent acted rogue. That was a very bad, poor judgment that he made. And there needs to be an investigation, and he potentially needs to go away depending on what the findings are. And they do not look good. On the other side of the aisle, Alex Preddy was not this stand-up ICU nurse guy. That's just not true. You had seen videos of him going to the streets, kicking and breaking brake lights for one of the vehicles, spitting on ICE agents in the past. So he wasn't this stand-up amazing hero. And if I'm not, I could be wrong on this. I haven't debunked this one yet. But he also got fired from the ICU nurse for not being from the ICU for not being a good, I guess, nurse within the unit. So two things can be true at once. It was a tragedy. It was horrific. The ICE agent needs to be investigated. There needs to be an entire investigation. But Alex Preddy was not a stand-up hero guy like they make it out to be. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. And one last point I do have to add to that at the same point. when you look at it too, I don't blame Alex Preddy and I do not blame Renee Good. I blame the elected leadership over them. They are inciting the violence. And again, words have consequences. When you go and take to the streets and say ICE agents are Gestapo, federal law enforcement is the Gestapo, you're Nazis, they're trying to have a civil war again, take to the streets and fight. When you use that rhetoric in your speech, you are going to suffer the consequences. And unfortunately, these two individuals got caught in the crosshairs. I want to hear your thoughts on this. This is a big topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to Alex Preddy real quick, I had not heard that he was fired. And again, I haven't debunked this either or looked very far into it. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe his parents dropped a note a couple of weeks before this situation happened saying that they were worried about him and they were worried that he was kind of going down the rabbit hole and losing it a little bit, had the potential to become violent. So I think that's really interesting too. There's a lot to unpack with everything you just said. I do agree that it boils down to the elected officials because again, I don't think it's normal Americans that are just sitting around their house and suddenly they're like, "Huh, the right's a bunch of Nazis. Let me put this on Twitter," and it just blows up on Twitter. Because normally, if you have an outlandish claim and you put it on Twitter or you put it on TikTok or Instagram, it just kind of dies out. It doesn't really go anywhere. So the elected officials definitely are, stoking the fire. They're making things worse. They're causing this polarization. Going back to the Grammys, it's kind of like that too. They're up in their high rises, their mansions, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just gonna have these other people go fight for me," and it's really sick. I also I don't blame Alex Preddy or Renee Good because I do fundamentally believe that they were caught in the crosshairs, like you said. But I also have to counter that with saying I think that they definitely could have done more research and they definitely could have tried to figure out maybe why they're not the Gestapo. But to another degree, I think you can blame the social media companies as well when you
Mhm.
look at the algorithm and you look at how you might interact with something that's slightly liberal or slightly radical and you comment or you let it relapse a couple of times or you send it to somebody. The algorithm's going to send you more and more and more to get that emotional connection, and it ultimately radicalizes you. So yes, I blame the elected officials predominantly, definitely blame the social media, and slightly I blame the individuals just for not recognizing, holy crap, I've become fundamentally radicalized and I'm trying to run over ICE agents with my car. I also do blame Renee Good's girlfriend or partner or wife or whatever she was because she told her to drive.
Mhm.
And when you have that relationship, regardless of if it's a straight relationship or a gay relationship, I'm going to trust my boyfriend. If I'm in a dangerous situation, I'm fearing for my life, and my boyfriend gives me a command, I'm going to trust him. I don't know what their relationship was like because they were lesbians. I don't know if there's like a one that acts like the boyfriend or not. That sounds really terrible to say, but if that was the relationship that they had where Renee fundamentally trusted her partner as the one that got her out of trouble or that protected her, obviously she's going to listen. And you see the split second decision as soon as the other woman says drive, she does. It's instinctual. And I think that's a terrible thing. And again, I don't really blame, I do blame the girlfriend for Renee getting shot. But again, the girlfriend was probably trying to protect Renee as well. And just like you said, it all goes right back up to the elites and to the politicians that are boiling this and making it worse. And also it's extremely selfish of them because we don't see this in any other blue states.
Right.
We saw a little bit in Portland, we saw a little bit in New York, but nothing like this. And I believe it's because of the fraud. I believe that they wanted to distract from what Nick Shirley found and from what other people were being able to find through the internet and through their own independent research. And I think it was purely selfish where Tim Walz and Ilan Omar were like, huh, well, let's just really focus on what ICE is doing instead of the
Mhm.
fraud. And again, these people got caught in the crossfires. It's
Right.
really terrible.
Let's see, we got a comment here before we move on. There's a bunch of nurses on TikTok saying that nurses should change how they treat ICE agents and MAGA. threatening them with syringes, preventing them from sleeping during their stay at the hospital. They're getting fired from their jobs, of course. Yeah, 100%. And they deserve to get fired because that is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know the exact way that they say it, but I'm pretty sure it's in when they take like the oath for being a doctor or
Mhm.
oath of health and service that they will protect every single individual that comes in there, regardless of race, sex, national origin, whatever it may be. So this is just horrific. And those people that do post that and are in any of those groups, they need to go instantly because that
Yeah.
is abysmal. That's ridiculous.
No, that's
Um,
sick, and it's the do no harm is where
yeah,
that comes from. That's
there
the
you
oath
go.
that they take.
Yep.
And real quick, I know we've got our next topic to get on to, but I have to say here in New Hanover County, we have two hospitals. We have a smaller orthopedic hospital and we have a big hospital. It's called, I call it Big Novant. It's our large hospital that they cover everything.
Yeah.
And we had a nurse walk out. I believe it was 2 Fridays ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, like nobody's gonna show up to that. I'm thinking to myself, what nurse walks out? Like, do no harm. You can't walk out if you have somebody that's sick or somebody that needs a breathing treatment or whatever. You can't just do that. So I was out and about that day and I thought, well, I'll just take a detour. It's my longer way home anyway. And I drove past it, and there were so many protesters out there. There were probably at least 100, and they weren't nurses. They were regular everyday people that drove all the way over there just to stand on the side of the road and protest ICE. And I
Wow.
was like, okay, this is weird. This is kind of dumb. And I was going to see the Melania movie with some friends that night. So I told my friend about it and we drove there together, and she wanted to see it. So she drove past it. 'Cause again, it was just barely out of the way of the movie theater, and they were all packing up. It was like 6:07, no pun intended, maybe 6:08, and we're seeing these people flock to their cars, and there might be 15 left at this point. They all drove separate. They all parked in general guest parking. Now, my grandpa was in the hospital, same hospital, last September. He passed away at the hospital, and I can tell you, every single one of those parking spots is for the loved, like the family of a loved one that is in the hospital, whether they're dying, whether they're sick, whether they're having a baby. It is for the loved ones of people who are in the hospital. And these people's derangement and their sick obsession cause them to take parking spots from people whose loved ones are literally dying in the hospital so that they can go protest about something that doesn't even affect them. They were all old white people. They were all old white people. Does not affect them whatsoever. But you know, it does affect people is if they had to park at the parking deck that's about half a mile away and they missed their loved one taking their last breath by mere seconds
Right.
because somebody felt entitled enough to take a parking spot that somebody else needed. It was sick. It was sick.
That is horrific, and I'm sorry to hear about your grandpa. But that is horrific. They don't. Yeah. To echo your point, they don't care. They think that they are doing well. They're probably paid. More than
For
likely, they're
sure.
getting some sort of a pay by doing what they're doing. But yeah, it's just very sick to see, and they don't care if they're taking up a poor elderly person's spot or a family member
Mhm.
who's going to go watch their loved ones take their last breath. They don't care. All they care is that they're making a statement saying that ICE is bad, Orange Man bad, and yeah, it's very sad to see that we're in this. And I'm glad. By the way, we're going back a little bit, but that echo chamber comment is amazing. How you had said that the social media and the algorithm, and that as much as social media can be used for such great things, and we see it on a daily
Mhm.
basis, there are some serious and very dark consequences. And just doing this alone, I have to sometimes watch it with my algorithm because my algorithm, as far as politics, obviously I'm conservative. I have a lot of conservative takes. Some may say radical, but I'd say very rational. And a lot of times that algorithm will put you down a rabbit hole, and it's just an echo chamber. The more and more you
Mhm.
feed into it, the more and more you consume, and then yes, that's where it gets really bad, and that's why a lot more people get radicalized, and a lot of people on both sides. Don't get me wrong, but that is
Yeah,
a
for
huge
sure.
issue that they do need to address, and there needs to be some sort of um, way to correct it because the way we are going is not the best way, I believe. But we'll
No,
find out
not at
with
all.
with all that. Let's see. We'll go over our next topic today. By the way, for anyone who has any questions, whether it's for me or for Miss Reagan, go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll answer them here on the whim. But please feel free to put something in the chat and allow us to answer some of your questions. Let's see. Lexi Laura wishing the tear on Caroline Levitt. Wishing the tear on Tara on Caroline Levitt. What are you talking about there, Miss Becca? But okay, we'll go ahead and get into our next topic. I guess we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the Epstein files. I know I have not fully dived into them. I've seen some bits and pieces and as much as I can stomach because these last file drops are pretty horrific and scary. What are your, let's just get your takes. What's your whole thoughts on the Epstein files and everything that's come out?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna go with the same sentiment as you have. I have not gone straight into the rabbit hole yet. I obviously have not read all 3 million files and listened to the hours and hours of audio and watched the video and everything. But I think what we're seeing is two very troubling cases. The first one is that nobody's being arrested. I guess we'll say three actually. Nobody's being arrested. No charges have been taken up. They've had these files for years and we haven't seen any action. And like you said, the things in these files are sick and they're horrific and they're absolutely terrible. They are really things that when we saw Pizzagate years and years and years ago, people were like, oh, that's conspiracy, that's fake. And now these files have been dropped and it's like, oh, wow, it's not. So I think that the lack of action is one of the most concerning pieces. And for anybody that's actually involved, and that kind of leads me into my second point, is I hate the word misinformation and disinformation, but there's a lot in there when we see certain things being talked about certain people in the files. Again, I haven't pilfered through all 4,286 or something crazy mentions of Trump's name, but when people say, oh my gosh, Trump's in the files, well, yeah, Trump's gonna be in the files. He and Epstein lived in the same city. And when you go through it, a lot of these mentions of Trump are like news headlines, or they're different people talking about the election and things like that. Or you scroll down and it's some wild allegation made against Donald Trump. And then they say this person is not a credible source for whatever reason. And I think we really need to pay attention to that. Another one of the files said, I think that one of the George Bushes, not sure which one to be honest, I can't remember, but that one of them had raped a girl and that they were killing babies and that they were eating their intestines. And then when you scroll down, if I'm not mistaken, it said that this source wasn't credible and that he had consumed psychedelic mushrooms before this interview. So we have to be really careful when we see this stuff. And then now we have AI and we have people who are faking the documents and trying to make it look like certain people are involved or certain situations happen. So I think we have to be really, really wise when viewing them and when listening to people making these claims. Now, again, I'm not trying to take away from what is in the files. I believe that anybody that is legitimately guilty, not allegations from a crazy person, legitimately guilty, they should go to jail for a very long time, if not for the rest of their lives. They need to be put away. These are sick. But we also can't assume that every single person whose name is mentioned in the files is automatically guilty. And for my last point regarding this, the amount of things that were redacted in this drop was extremely concerning. We saw things where people were talking about what age they wanted. Oh, I want a 16-year-old or I want a 10-year-old. And then the names are completely redacted. It's Jeffrey Epstein to big block of black. And we saw things, I think, again, these are all, I saw this one on Instagram, so I haven't had time to go in and look, but there was one that looked like the assassination of somebody was being approved. And it didn't say who that person was or who it was being approved by. And I think it's really interesting. I think America's sitting back wondering, well, A, were they assassinated? And B, who was pulling the strings on this, saying who does and does not deserve to be assassinated? And who were they telling? Because I believe who it was going to was also redacted. Who are they telling to commit the assassination? So the redactments need to go. They promised us the Epstein files in full. we deserve the Epstein files in full. And they dropped so much where people are pulling out of context things, like I was saying, with
Yeah.
the people who are not credible. Like, they dropped all of the most concerning things that people can pull from and blame Trump or blame this person or blame that person. So why not just unredact it? Because they already are pulling what they want from it. So just unredact the rest of it and take people to jail.
100%. And before I touch on that right there, we had clarification. So there's a TikToker who is a labor and delivery nurse wishing a fourth degree tear on Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary. Yes, on a Republican politician. Yeah. That's insane and that's horrific. And honestly, I'm like I said, the First Amendment is for everyone, but there definitely needs to be certain stipulations, because if you're going out there just openly saying it, I don't care if it is against Ilhan Omar or it's against Caroline Leavitt. Like there needs to be some things that needs to be in check, because that is just ridiculous. And I mean, shame on them for doing that. Honestly, shame on that person for saying that.
Absolutely.
But as far as the Epstein files go, I mean, there is so much, and like you said, there's a lot of it has been deemed not credible, and people are treating it as gospel and the word. And I think that's very dangerous, because a lot of people, so that assassination you're talking about, or I believe it's the same one. So apparently Joe Biden was assassinated or killed in 2019 by a firing squad. And the person that was Joe Biden for the presidency was wearing a mask. So if you're going to believe that Trump is in the files and everything, because the same sources, it's not credible. It's not credible. And the same goes for Joe Biden being a clone. So you have to treat both as the same thing. You can't just pick and choose which narrative you want to run with. If you're going to say that Donald Trump is in the files and he's doing these horrific things, then you have to you have to believe that Joe Biden was also a clone for the last 4 years.
Absolutely. That's a great point. That is such a great point.
Yeah. Exactly. Perfectly said. Free speech doesn't mean your speech doesn't have consequences. Absolutely. That is 100% right. If you're going to go out there and say outlandish things like that, that doesn't mean that you're going to have a job tomorrow because of your beliefs. So I'm glad you brought that up. Very well said. Unreal stuff. And is also, what's his name? Alex Jones, the crazy conspiracy theory. I mean, he's been right about this for a long time, and it's crazy. I think a lot of people owe him apologies. And there was another study that actually came out that RFK talked about. This one really went under the radar. And there's this thing called atrazine. All right, it is used in pesticides, and it's used in herbicides, things like that. So I did a little research on this atrazine. So he said there's a famous interview. He said they're turning the frogs gay. And I was like, okay, well, like, this guy is crazy, right? So I looked at this study, and it's actually insane. So they took a batch of frogs. It was 40 frogs, and they used this atrazine chemical in there, right? They put this chemical, it was like 0.1 parts per billion into the water, right? And out of those 40 frogs, 30 of them ended up being chemically castrated to where they could not reproduce at all. 30 of them. And then in extreme cases, 4, so that would be 10%, since there was 40 frogs, 10% of these frogs ended up actually turning into a female and started laying fertilized eggs. So what does that mean?
Wow.
I mean, so I looked at this atrazine. I'm like, okay, all right, cool. There was that study on the frogs, but how much of this are we actually consuming? Like, maybe this is just a random chemical that's in a flag that we don't interact with, or whatever, right? Maybe it's just a one-off weird chemical. Well, then I looked. Yes, it's in pesticides. It's in herbicides. 30% or 30 million 30 million U.S. citizens consume water that has atrazine in it. 30 million in the entire U.S. So it really makes you wonder how we have an increasingly, and it's no secret that the population is turning more and more gay, and turning more towards the transgender ideology and all the LGBTQ and extra letters, the alphabet people. It really makes you wonder if chemicals like this, and I'm sure there's other chemicals that aren't even talked about, are doing this harm to people and American citizens. I know that was way off, but the big point that I'm trying to make there is Alex Jones was right, and I think a lot of people owe him an apology. I don't think everything he said is right, but it's just insane how much is out there and how much is being covered up by our government. And the Epstein files are yet another example.
Hmm. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a running joke with my boyfriend's family where his brother's more left leaning, he and his mom are right leaning, and we'll be at the kitchen table and we'll be making jokes. We'll be like, they're turning the freaking frogs gay.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard about the study, and that is actually wild. And I agree. Some things Alex Jones definitely deserves an apology for. Some things Alex Jones
Yeah.
is still Alex Jones, but the frog one, I never thought I would live to see the day that the meme at the kitchen table turned into an actual scientific study and fact.
Yeah, if you don't believe me, go ahead and look up atrazine frog study or something like that. It'll pop up because I couldn't believe it. This was like a 1 a.m. thought that I had, and I looked it up and I'm like, oh my goodness. And why is this not talked about? And that kind of brings us to the next segment, and that's MAHA and how important that is. And I think that was one of the undersung issues and concerns for this past election cycle because a
Yeah.
lot of these moms who care about their children and care about the slop that they're feeding us, they stood up and were a part of this and believe in the Maha movement because they know of all the chemicals, whether it's the vaccines or our foods. I want to get your thoughts on that. I know it's a very broad spectrum, Maha is, but what are your thoughts on the movement and what you're seeing, and maybe some things to be worried about, but also some things that are exciting?
Yeah, so I've supported Trump since 2016. I have to say that when we got the Maha movement, that was one of my favorite parts of his campaign and one of the things that got me the most excited. Like obviously everything else was very Trump, very baseline. We saw it in 2016, we saw it in 2020, but when he got on this Maha movement, it was like, wow, this will literally impact people for years to come if we can improve health. And I have a chronic medical condition, so I've had periods of my life where I'm very healthy and where I'm very not healthy. And there was about a year or two where I was no sugar, no gluten, like nothing that was artificial, all organic. And I have to say that's the best I've ever felt in my life. And then when I wasn't sick anymore, my nutritionist was like, well, you can start going back and having things like yogurt and having things like Ritz crackers. You can have gluten again. And very, very, I wouldn't say quickly, but that was a little over 10 years ago. And I can tell you that now, when I should be at the peak of my health, when I'm in my early 20s, I don't feel as good as I did when I was 9 or 10 or 11 on that no sugar, no gluten, no artificial anything diet. And there definitely are things in our food that are not meant for us. We can look at the testosterone levels in men and estrogen levels in men, and then the same in women, and we can see that hormonally we are imbalanced compared to where Americans were just 50 or 100 years ago. And the only common denominator that we can find is that it's things in our food. We have extremely high population of people with heart disease, extremely high population of people with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, extremely high population of people who are obese in our country. And we're the wealthiest country in the world. We should be great. Our population should be healthy and working, but instead we have so many people out on disability, and then they're on food stamps and they're buying more junk food, which is furthering their disabilities. And I think that that is one of the policies that President, I don't know if you could say policies, but I guess platforms, campaign tactics that he used that actually has a long term ROI. If we can pull out the dyes and we can pull out the chemicals and we can pull out the pesticides and the herbicides and the artificial sweeteners and chemicals and everything, then all of a sudden we'll be healthier, our kids will be healthier, our kids will be healthier. Maybe 4 generations from now we'll actually have a return to people who resemble what we saw in the early 1900s and the 1950s.
Yeah, and to add on that note, I did an episode on this about 2 months ago now, about Maha and everything. And one of the biggest things that I was surprised about, and I'm going to quiz you here, so let's see how you do on this because this is fascinating and it is worth talking about. And first of all, Becca, you're absolutely right. Some people who can't eat bread in the U.S., they can eat it in European countries. Exactly. And I'm going to
Yes.
touch on why here in a second. So, Reagan, how many additives do you think, just a guess, how many additives do you think are in the American diet or are allowed within the US food production?
Oh gosh, how many additives?
Yes.
This
Just a
might
rough
be way
estimate.
off, but I'm honestly gonna guess like 100,000.
Okay. Okay. How many do you think are in Europe?
Maybe like a couple thousand, 10,000.
Okay. Well, you kind of got a little mixed up there, but so the U.S. has 10,000 additives, okay, and in Europe it is 430 to 440. That was the rough estimate. So you mean to
Wow.
tell me that we have 10,000 and they only have, we'll just say for number's sake, 450? How is that allowed? How is that like I just can't fathom that how that can be allowed and how that is the standard. And if you really look at it, this is not a joke. This is truly serious. There are two when you have like the big companies, we'll use Kraft as an example. They send one recipe to Europe and they send another cheaper, disgusting, chemical loaded recipe to the United States. How is that allowed? And why are we not cracking down on that? That is just another example on how atrocious our food supply is. When you allow 10,000 chemicals to go in the United States into our food supply and only 430 abroad, that is absolutely sick.
No, it is. And I can tell you, two spring breaks ago, my family, boyfriend's family, we all went to Mexico. And I went out of the country when I was like 2 or 3. We went to Jamaica. Obviously, I don't remember anything about it. Now, when we went to Mexico, the food was better. I was eating things that I don't eat in America because it's what's available to me. I was eating Doritos and I was drinking Fanta and Coca Cola. And I can tell you, I hate Doritos in the US. I do not like Doritos. They freak me out. I don't know why. Nachos come in a bag. I don't like them. When I'm in Mexico and it's between that or, something I don't know or something I don't trust, I'm going to eat the packaged Doritos. And they were so good. They were so good. And I can tell you the same thing with Coke. I don't like Coke in the US. I think it's too syrupy. The Coke in Mexico is completely different. And again, I told you I've got some medical issues, and I felt better in Mexico. I actually felt good. I got up every morning. I wasn't sick and lethargic and just feeling brain fog. I woke up every morning at a good hour. I felt good. I was ready to take on the day. I normally drink 1 or 2 coffees every day here in the US. When I was in Mexico, I might be lucky to be able to find one coffee. You can't find caffeine there the way that you can in the US. You don't have vending machines and gas stations full of Monster and Prime and prepackaged Starbucks and 5 hour energies. And it was a completely different food culture. The way that they actually interacted with their food was completely different. You even heard them talk about food. They talked about it being sustenance and being sustaining and good for your mouth and good for your body. And just a completely different culture. And then I came back to the US and I ate the things that I liked. And I was like, I like Doritos in Mexico. Maybe I'll try them again. Lethargic, brain fog, felt sick, still hate Doritos in the US, still don't care for Coke in the US, still don't care for Fanta in the US. And it was insane that I could feel completely better in 1 week in Mexico. And it took maybe 2 or 3 days to feel like crap again in the US. And I
Yeah.
don't eat bad here. I tell you, I don't eat prepackaged food and sodas and things like that. I drink my coffee, but normally I'm eating vegetables and grilled meat and things like that. So when you're eating packaged food in Mexico and it makes you feel better than what we consider healthy food in the US, you realize that there's a serious problem going on.
No kidding. And I know people laughed at Trump when he first came into office because he said, and maybe you recall this, that he was bringing the Mexican Coke to America. And what he meant
Mm-hmm.
by that is there's going to be cane sugar instead of the high fructose corn syrup in the Cokes. And I think that what you are saying probably coincides exactly with this issue because it is at least made somewhat more naturally there than it is here in the US. And this is just yet another example of that. And yeah, I mean, I think Maha has the potential to do amazing things, and I really hope that they can solve a lot of this. And I hope it doesn't just end here. I hope the next president, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, they can continue this fight because this is such an important issue, and they truly need to do better. And yeah, we'll see what happens, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, we need to see our chronic illnesses go down. We need to see the
Yeah.
rates of autism go down. And we
Mhm.
need to see Americans that actually want to work out again. That's another major thing is we're starting to see in young people, they want to work out. They want to do private training. They want to find like a spouse or a partner at a 5K or a fitness group or something like that. And it's really amazing to see that. I think that's something in our culture that needs to be continued because it's something that we had 50 or 100 years ago without people even noticing it. Their everyday life was a workout, and it's not what we have today.
And Becca just put this in the comments, and it's perfect. SNAP should pay for nourishing food the same way WIC does. Americans are living on processed junk paid by the American taxpayers. If you really need food assistance, it should at least nourish you. I was just going to ask that question. I'm glad she brought that up. Would you support saying, hey, SNAP benefits only for healthy nutrition foods? No more buying sodas, no more buying Doritos, only for good, healthy materials. Would you support something like that?
Absolutely. When we look at poverty and when we look at kind of socioeconomic statistics in the US, we see that the people with lower incomes tend to be more unhealthy. I think JD Vance even wrote about this in Hillbilly Elegy. He wrote about how he was kind of a chubbier child. He would drink Mountain Dew and he would eat terribly. And that is what they know. A lot of them, that's what they know. That's what SNAP pays for. It's easy. When people are working really hard, it's easy to buy prepackaged dinners or microwavable dinners and things like that. But I think if SNAP actually would allow good food to be purchased through it, because it is a fact that good food is more expensive than prepackaged chemical laden food. But I think we would see a huge shift in our socioeconomic classes because the impoverished would feel better. They would be able to work. They wouldn't be on disability. We would see school scores. We would see grades and standardized test scores go up in children from underprivileged communities because, again, they would feel good. They wouldn't be cranked up on Coca-Cola and red dye 40 and then crash halfway through their standardized test. We would actually see so much improvement in our classes and our socioeconomic issues if SNAP would just make that one shift to pay for apples instead of paying for fruit snacks.
Yeah. And I'm going to hit on one last point, and then we're going to switch to our final topic for the night since we're drawing near the end here. I think one of the big things that we have in America, where it really started, is if you look back, there were two times when women entered the workplace at high levels. So we go back to World War II. Women obviously took a lot of the Rosie the Riveter type industrial jobs because a lot of the men were overseas fighting the war or abroad, right? And then you also have the same, and I believe it was around the 1960s and 70s, a lot of women, again, went into the workforce. I think that's when it really started because this is where we have a lot of the problems, our food supply. At that point, if you have two parents both working full-time jobs to provide because there's little money, you're going to have issues, and that's exactly where it started. Suddenly, they couldn't have that quality time with their kids anymore, that family time. So now we're seeing a big uptick in kids with issues, and it really starts with the millennials. If you look at them, half of them are interesting to say the least. And then that went to us. And then additionally, the food supply, again, they couldn't cook the true meal. It wasn't really traditional anymore. The man worked and the woman provided. They couldn't do that. So what did they do? They relied on the TV dinner meals, the quick microwave society type meals. You throw it in the microwave, you cook it, you give it to your kids. And a lot of those foods, again, are just straight up poison. And it's going to be interesting because there's not really a lot of studies on this issue yet. Because it's relatively new and they really haven't invested any money to research this. But I would love to see the numbers behind it and how bad our food has been really tainted by all these chemicals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even going off of your point, a little off the Maha track, but we talk about both parents going into the workforce, and then all of a sudden we see this call for universal child care. And when we're seeing the call for universal child care, we're also seeing where schools are providing school lunches, and then universal child care will be feeding your kids. And then parents lose control not only of what their kids are learning, who's taking care of their kids and who's raising their kids. They're losing control of, I know at my high school, there were people that would eat breakfast and lunch at school. And if you start this when you're a toddler with universal child care, and then you move into elementary school and middle school and high school, and the government gets to decide what your kids are eating, 2 meals a day and snacks, if you qualify for that, you have lost every ability to raise your child. You're not eating with them, you're not feeding them, you're not cooking for them, you're not spending time with them, you're not teaching them morals or the things that you want to be taught. You're literally letting the public school system and the public food industry raise your child, and then we look around and we wonder what happened. I think it's very obvious what happened.
Yeah, 100%. And that's going to go into our potentially final topic for the night here. And that is right here. I have a beautiful sign. I am the pro-life generation. Reagan, based on what we've talked about and based on what I've seen, I'm just going to go out on a win here and say that you are pro-life. Would that be a correct statement, or am I completely wrong?
100% correct.
Okay, good. I'm glad we're on the same page. I had a feeling, but I wasn't 100% sure. So on that note then, I just want to see what your thoughts are on abortion and this epidemic, really. I believe abortion in itself is a certain type of epidemic here that is plaguing America. I mean, you hear numbers. They say 1.14 last year of abortions. I think it's closer to 1.5 because a lot of them they did not truly track. So 1.5 million abortions happened in the U.S. alone, 73 million worldwide. What do those numbers tell you? Does that really hurt? What's your whole feeling on that?
I mean, I know it's 1/3 of my generation, which
Yeah.
I think is, we talk about numbers, we talk about people, and it's big numbers, but it's hard to put that into context. We can put into context 1/3 of our generation should be here. And those are people that could be scientists, that could be the next Albert Einstein, that could be political commentators and be the next Charlie Kirk, that could be the next president of the United States, that could be the person to cure cancer. You never know what that 1/3 is going to be capable of. You don't know who out of that could be getting the next Nobel Peace Prize, that could solve world hunger. That is people's friends, people's soulmates, people's husbands and wives. Those are parents who never had the opportunity to raise a child. Those are women. It statistically shows that with every abortion, a woman is less likely to be fertile in the future. Those are millions and millions and millions of women who are gradually losing their ability to be fertile depending on how many abortions that they had. And I agree with you, it's an epidemic. I think it's really funny that we locked the entire world down for COVID-19 when it really wasn't that deadly. But the same people that wanted to lock down the world and put a mask on you and separate you from your family for a disease that really most likely isn't going to kill you are the same ones that want to turn their backs on an abortion, that want to pretend like it's not real when abortion has a 100% mortality rate. If even if the baby does not die, they make sure it does. They take it out and it's really sick. They will put it in a Ziploc bag and suffocate it. They will just put it in the trash can. They know it can't live on its own and it's sick, but they will make sure that the baby does not survive. And quite frankly, sometimes the mother doesn't even survive. It is the worst plague upon our world because it is the lawful murder. It is like if I just woke up one day and decided that my neighbor, excuse my language, if I woke up and decided that my neighbor was a pain in my ass and I went and killed them, that's what abortion is. You wake up one day, you realize you're pregnant because most times it is. I know that we talk about there are cases of rape and there are cases of incest, and those are terrible, but majority of the time it's your fault. It's self-induced. We know how babies are made, and you decide that that baby's going to be a pain in your ass, so you commit murder, and it's sick and it's horrible.
Here's a point that Becca made, how the left likes to say, you may deport the cure to cancer, or maybe we've aborted the cure to cancer. They don't even have a chance of life, and that is a brilliant point right there, and 100% right. And it's so tragic, and I had the fortunate opportunity of going to the March for Life a few weeks ago now, and that was such a humbling, great experience. I'll be back next year, but again, abortion is just a root of evil. I really do believe that, and oh man, it's very tough. Here's a question for you. What do you think about the people who say that men, like myself, we don't get to have an opinion on abortion? Because I hear that often, and the liberals and the left love to throw that insult at me and say that I don't have a uterus, so I don't have an opinion. What would you say to that?
No, I hate that opinion so much. I really do. First of all, when we want to let's go back to the 1/3 of our generation. Those are people that every man in our generation could have been friends with or could have been impacted by. So obviously, if we want to go back to the neighbor situation, if a murder happened in my apartment complex, I think all of my apartment would have a right to be upset about it. And I think all of Gen Z has a right to be upset. And, you know, not that abortion only happens in Gen Z, whether it's Gen X, whether it's millennials. I think anybody has a right to be upset about it because it impacts our day-to-day life, and it impacts our society, and it impacts our culture. Also, babies are made with a man and a woman, and men are 50% of that equation. So I think if you're a father, then you obviously should have a right to it. If you're somebody who wants to be a father, you have a right to have an opinion about it. I would hate to think that somebody was having sex out of marriage and their girlfriend or partner or hookup or whatever ended up being pregnant, and that dad was radically anti-abortion, and he contacted the woman and found out that his baby had been murdered. In that case, I think the man should 100% have an opinion, because that was 50% of his DNA, 50% of his participation.
Right. I'd seen this video on that same note about how a woman decided that she wanted to have an abortion, and the guy is outside the clinic just screaming like, please don't do this, please don't do it. It brings goosebumps to listen to that video and see it, but it is so sad, and you are 100% right. Men, 50% of it, we create 50% of that, so it's just unreal. And I really do. One thing that I will say is, obviously, when I went to this March for Life, the left loves to portray this as an old white man issue. They constantly say it's an old white man issue. But I would say 75% of the people that I had seen there at the March for Life were young Generation Z, Gen Alpha individuals. 75%, because Generation Z knows the evils of abortion. They know how horrific it is, and they see the writing on the wall that they are going to be the pro-life generation. And I strongly believe Generation Z will be the generation to abolish abortion. I really believe that, just off what I had seen the other day at that March for Life. And I really hope that we can be the generation that ends up solving this issue.
Absolutely. And I mean, with we have so much access to information at our fingertips where we can learn the atrocities of what abortion actually is, and we can learn about the history of abortion. Like I said, my boyfriend and I, we go to school together, and he's in a class right now. He's in a leadership class with a professor who assigned him to watch 2 TED Talks. It was late at night. He picked like the 2 shortest TED Talks, and one of them was a Black lady talking about her work in the healthcare industry. And she talked about leadership and said that she wants to be a leader of reproductive health. And we're blessed enough that we have information at our fingertips that we can learn our history. And it's really shocking to see a Black woman in that profession want to see reproductive health, in other words, if we don't want to sugarcoat it, wants to see abortion for all. When abortion was founded by Margaret Sanger, whose goal was to wipe out the Black population, when we look at statistics, and 40% of the women who get an abortion are Black, are in a minority group. It is not equal between races. It is not equal between who uses it. If we want to talk about something that's racist, if we want to talk about something that takes away from our minority communities, it is abortion. And we have the ability to learn that now. We have the ability to fight against what the narrative is and say, actually, no, that's wrong. It's not equality. It's not equity. It's actually quite the opposite of that.
Yeah, 100%. And then Becca in the comments right here added to that point, saying, and this is a great one, and she talked about this on my podcast not too long ago. The abortion pill is 22 times higher than the drug label of 0.5% versus 10.9% women experiencing an adverse event. Drug trial versus women 2017 to 2023. So it's 22 times higher than what the label says. That, oh, you only have a 0.5% of a chance that you're going to have some sort of adverse reaction. No, that's a 10.9. Just call it 11%. So basically 1 out of 10 women who have an abortion are going to have some sort of adverse effect. And this is them just skewing the numbers, and it is horrific. And this there needs to be better transparency. And I'm radical with abortion. I'm 100% pro-life, and I'm going to even add to my point there. I believe before you get which I think abortion should get abolished, right? But at the very least, before you get an abortion, you need to have an ultrasound. You need to listen to your baby's heartbeat. I really believe that. Some say that's radical, but I think that you need to listen to your baby's heartbeat before you make the decision to kill it. And I think there needs to be a waiting period of maybe, I don't know, 3 to 7 days, something. Obviously, I want to get rid of it 100%, but these are small little measures that we can get in place because abortion is such a root of evil. And then my last point on this topic is, I said this last week, and this still stands true in my mind. Where is the where is the museum of abortion? We have plenty of Holocaust museums, which, don't get me wrong, the Holocaust was horrific, and it will always be horrific as much as people want to plaster over it and pretend it did not happen. It's horrific, but where are the abortion museums when we had 70 million here in the United States alone, 10 times the amounts of people that died during the Holocaust? Where's the outrage for that? Where's the outrage for these individuals? Where's the outrage for the people that are being the children, the babies are being killed? Where's that outrage? I'd love to see it, but anyways, that's just my radical stances on it. But I'm curious to hear if you have any radical stances or what people may deem as radical. Hey Reagan, I don't mean to cut you off. Your sound went out. The microphone must have died. You're good. I cannot hear you. You're good.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Is that okay without the mic?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, awesome. We'll just do it like this then. Are we back on?
Yep, we're all good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, radical stances. I'm sure I have them. I hear about them every day when I go on campus. I don't think that they're radical, to be honest. I think, we have the Second Amendment. I think that we should all be able to have guns. I think that we have the First Amendment. We should be able to support a political candidate or a political ideology without being threatened to be shot or murdered. I think that the left really loves the term hate speech. They really love that one when you say that you don't like Bad Bunny, or when you say that ICE is doing a good job. That's hate speech. We did that as a debate table last semester. But it's not hate speech. Is saying that they're going to Kirkify you, or that if you voted for Donald Trump, they're going to beat the crap out of you, or that you're a Nazi. Or, one of the ones we got this week is that all Republicans are cannibals because apparently we supported the Epstein files, according to them, and the Epstein files had cannibalism. So that was what we got called on campus this week, was cannibalistic pedophiles. So I have a lot of radical takes that I'm sure they would perceive as radical, but I think, kind of like you said earlier, I think they're common sense, and I think they're rational. I think that we need to only let people into our country legally. I think we need mass deportations of anybody that's here illegally because they're taking up resources. It's driving up inflation. It's driving up the cost of living. And we have our sovereignty to protect. A country can't stand if you don't ensure her sovereignty. So how can we expect to see another 250 years if we don't ensure our nation's sovereignty? I think those are all takes that the left would perceive as radical, but like you said, that we perceive as rational. And I love your point about the abortion museums. I mean, if it's 10 times the Holocaust, and again, not trying to downplay the Holocaust or anything, but 10 times the Holocaust, and we don't talk about it. It's taboo. Again, even saying that you're pro-life is a radical take nowadays. But if you say anything against the Holocaust or against the Armenian genocide or against any other genocide in history, then you're radical for ignoring the genocide. But all of a sudden, when we acknowledge the genocide of abortion, you're radical for acknowledging it. You're radical for not acknowledging other abortion or other genocides. It's insane. And, I think we need to recognize all of them. I think we need to add abortion to the list of just horrific things that have happened to our human population, our human society.
Just like Becca said in the comments, abortion should be seen as a time in history as heinous as slavery and Nazi Germany. We cannot
Absolutely.
assign value to other humans. It's not our place. And then assigning value to other humans is how we get these heinous acts. And that is 100% right. She is not wrong on that. I do want to go ahead and we're going to finish this with two questions. A tradition on my show is we always ask a couple fun questions towards the end here to lighten the mood and go away and with some good commentary. So the first one being, I ask this one often, but it's always fun. I haven't done it on the live stream yet. All right, so picture your hand. All right, you have just say your hand is 5 different taps. So let's just say what I mean by that is you have 5 different liquids that can come out of your fingertips. So let's just say your thumb is orange juice, your index finger is, whatever, water. What would the 5 liquids that would come out of your hand, what would they be?
Okay. Obviously, it's going to be coffee. We already talked about that.
Yep.
Next
saw
one
that
is for
one.
next one's for sure going to be water because I
Okay.
will probably go days without actually drinking water.
Yep.
Then I'm going to have to say ginger ale. I love ginger ale. I don't drink a lot of stuff outside of coffee. Give me 1 minute. Let's see.
Gasoline and stuff too. Gasoline, technically, you know.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Gotta go with gasoline. I gotta get around. And then you know what? Salt water. I love the
Oh.
beach and I love the ocean. So put salt water in there. I'll always feel a little coastal and a little bit like I'm at home.
I love it. And then the final one that we're going to go with today, and I always love doing this one. What is your favorite Bible verse and why?
You know, this is probably not a great one to be my favorite Bible verse, but it is. I just heard it in church yesterday, and it's one that always resonates with me. It's one that I always have to remind myself of when things get really hard. I can't remember the exact verse or the exact way it goes, which is horrible for saying it's my favorite Bible verse. But there is a verse, it's actually multiple different places. It's in Matthew, I believe it's in Luke, as well as John, and as well as the Old Testament. It basically says, it's Jesus saying, "Why are you surprised when the world hates you? They hated me first." And as dark and you said we were going to have fun and wrap this up in a good way, but when I go to campus and when I put stuff out on my socials and when I do shows, and I always go to campus and I look at the comments, I'm like, man, I'm saying the truth. I'm trying to save my country. I'm trying to make sure that my kids have a better life than me, that they don't have to go through all the things that we're going through right now. Why do these people hate me? Why are they calling me a Nazi and a cannibal? And why are they doxing me at school? Why is this happening? Why is this happening to members of college Republicans and Turning Point USA? Why is this happening? And I always come back to that verse. It always comes up either in a podcast or in a church service or in a book whenever I need it most. And it really reminds me that we aren't here for pleasure. We're not here for fun. We're not here to just exist until we go to heaven. God assigned us a mission to be here, to be his messengers, to be his representatives. And we don't have dual citizenship. We are members and citizens of the kingdom of heaven. And we are here almost like ambassadors. We're here to further the kingdom of Christ. And when we get down and we get frustrated, we just want to throw in the towel and be like, man, everybody hates me. We're not here to be liked and we're not here to be loved. We're here to bring people to Christ so that we can make heaven crowded, like Charlie Kirk always said. So that's my favorite one. It just
Amen.
always brings me back to center and reminds me that I'm not here to be happy or be loved. I'm here to do Christ's mission and get back home to heaven.
Amen. Beautifully said. Beautifully
Thank
said. I'm going to go ahead and say mine and then we'll wrap it up here. But
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
I always have said in the past, and it's slightly changed, and I'll explain why here in a second. But I've always said my favorite one is, "This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." It's beautiful. I learned it when I was at one of the toughest schools in the Army, Air Assault School, and it just always stuck with me. But then I felt something the other day when I was driving that God put on my heart, and I changed it a little bit, and it's simply 2 words. And it's not a Bible verse, but it appears 45 times in the Bible, and it is, "But God." Because after those words, whatever follows after those words is always great. But God. And it's just amazing because that phrase, again, is used 45 different times in the Bible, and it carries such weight because as soon as those words are said, something big and amazing is going to follow. So that would probably be my favorite Bible verse, quote unquote, but that's where I'd go with mine.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that so much. And
Yeah.
mine up until the one I told you was always it was the verse about the armor of God and that he would clothe you
Yeah.
and protect you. And that was my favorite one. And then, I felt like this next one really boiled down to why you need the armor of God. But the
Yeah.
but God is amazing. I've heard that and it's never clicked until you said that. But that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
45 different times is just, it must stand out if something's being repeated that many times in a book, and especially the Bible. It carries
Absolutely.
great weight. So with that being said, before we wrap it up, do you have did you want to mention where people can find you, because you have been an excellent guest, and my guess is people are going to want to look you up after this and find out more about the wonderful Reagan Faulkner.
Absolutely. You can find me at the Wilmington Standard on YouTube. It's going to be a subsection called the Reagan Faulkner Show. You can just look up the Reagan Faulkner Show on YouTube. It'll pop up as well. And same with the socials, Facebook, YouTube, and Facebook. Nope, I totally messed that up. Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at the Reagan Faulkner Show. It's that simple. So I hope that y'all find me, and just thank you so much for having me on the Martin Memo tonight. This was great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining. And maybe one of these times I'll have to transfer over to your show and do something. But Reagan,
Absolutely.
it has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We would love to have you on the show as well.
Well, I look forward to it. So, with that being said, everyone, be sure to stay tuned on Wednesday, because I have an exclusive interview with a fellow young conservative like us. So be sure to stay tuned into that one on Wednesday, and then Friday. Oh man, I'm breaking down the Epstein files, so this is going to be great. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm doing that next week. I have a surprise, fun one that's coming on Friday, so be sure to stay tuned for that. As always, thank you so much for joining us today and what has been another successful Martin Memo Monday. Please let us know if you like this kind of interview style that we've been doing the past couple weeks. I think it's been great. We've had two amazing people. But with that being said, thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy Monday. I hope you all have an amazing week. God bless you all. And again, thank you for joining the Martin Memo.